What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. California is up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what California did in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Cal. My projection had them at 3-9, and then my prediction for them was 4-8. So I had no high expectations, of course, for California last year. I don't really know if I did predict them to be the worst team in the Pac-12 from last year, but I think I really probably did, but I just really couldn't remember. But you look at the way that Cal did last year, they went 6-6 overall. So this is a very big surprise team from last year. Again, going 6-6 in 2023. But if you count their bowl game loss at the end of the year, this team officially went 6-7 overall. So they did lose their bowl game, but they really got it to it. They went to a bowl game. That's really the big accomplishment from last year in 2023. Here was the schedule from last year for California, and you look at who they played in the non-conference. They played North Texas on the road. Auburn out of the SEC ended up losing that game at home on September the 9th. And they also played Idaho here on September the 16th. So they had a very easy non-conference schedule. I know that Auburn game was a challenge there, but they got that game at home at least, so the non-conference schedule wasn't too bad. And then you look at the losses coming in the Pac-12. Yes, this was their final year, of course, in the Pac-12. They're now heading to the ACC next year. You look at the losses, they lost to Washington, Oregon State, Utah, USC, and Oregon. So they had a very tough schedule in the Pac-12, but, they ended up winning those last three games there of the season from November 11th to November 25th. And that was enough for this Cal team to make it to a bowl game. So again, a really good season last year for California in 2023. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for California. And before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference for this upcoming season. So you look at their non-conference schedule. They will play UC Davis on the road at Auburn, and then San Diego State and Oregon State here in the non-conference. So yeah, Oregon State is not a Pac-12 game, of course. It is now a non-conference game since California now moved over to the ACC, but you got a couple of, easy games with UC Davis and San Diego State, and then you got Auburn, of course, in a rematch from last year. Again, that game is going to be on the road here. That's going to be a very tough game there on the road for this Cal team, but it should be a pretty even matchup like it was last year in 2023. So that is your non-conference schedule for Cal for 2024. Let's go back to the schedule now and go game by game now for the Golden Bears. They will start things off, of course, with UC Davis on August 31st, and then after that, they go on the road to play Auburn here on September the 7th. Then back at home for San Diego State here on September the 14th. And then they will go on the road to open up conference play on the road at Florida State here on September 21st. And then they get a bye week here in the last weekend of the month of September before playing Miami at home here on October the 5th as they go into the month of October. They will play Pittsburgh here on the road, though, on October the 12th. And then they'll play NC State at home here on October the 19th. And then they'll play their last non-conference game here against Oregon State on October 26th. And then in the month of November, they get a bye week before playing Wake Forest here on the road. That game, of course, will be on a Friday. Again, that game's going to be on the road. And then they'll play Syracuse at home here on November 16th. And then play Stanford here at home here on November 23rd. And then they close things out with SMU here on the road on November 30th. So that is the schedule for California for 2024. It's a little bit of a tough schedule. You got Florida State, Miami, and NC State here in the ACC, which are all going to be pretty tough games, but you don't have to play Louisville. You don't have to play North Carolina. You also don't have to play Clemson, at least. So that's the good news there about this California team heading into their first year in the ACC. So let's now get a projection here for California for 2024. This is the scale I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, again, that percentage is going to count as an automatic loss, and then your 20% games here in the orange will be games where California will be a double-digit underdog, and then your 40% games here in the yellow will be games where California will be a clear underdog in by about a touchdown. And then your 50-50 games will stay in the white. Games I think can really go either way. And then your 60% games here in the purple are going to be games where California will be favored by about a touchdown. And then your 80% games here in the blue are going to be games where California will be favored by double digits and then also by about a couple touchdowns. And then your 99% games here in the green are going to be games where California will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And also these are your easy easy wins here in that percentage. So we'll start with the easy wins here for California on this schedule. I think you got a couple of easy wins here for the Golden Bears, UC Davis and San Diego State. Now, San Diego State, I think, will be a little bit tricky, but California is playing that game at home, so I do still expect California to be a big favorite in that game. Maybe the game is not over 95% like UC Davis is. I think San Diego State probably could be a game that's at least at 90% and maybe close to that blue percentage there in the 80% category. But I'm going to stick with it here and put it in the green for right now because California is playing at home in this game. So I got a couple of easy wins on here for California. And they're not guaranteed wins, but we count these as automatic wins, just like I mentioned for these projections for 2024. And then you look at the rest of the schedule, there's not really any other games on here where you can favor California by double digits and then also by about a touchdown, by 7 or 8 points, somewhere in that range. So let's skip over to the games where I think California will be underdogs in. I don't have any red games on here at 1%, which are counted as automatic losses, but I do have one game on here where I think California is going to be a double-digit underdog, and that's going to be the game on the road at Florida State. So I think California is going to be clearly a double-digit underdog here against the Seminoles. Obviously, Florida State, one of the top teams coming up in the ACC this year. That's going to be a very tough game on the road to open up conference play here for Cal. And again, we don't know how good Cal is going to be here in their first year in the ACC, so maybe they're not on the level of Florida State, maybe for like the first couple years, and then they start to get back to where they need to be. So that'll be, like I said, a very tough game here on the road at Florida State, and that's the only game where I could see Cal being a double-digit underdog. And then we go to the games where I think Cal is going to be a clear underdog in by about a touchdown here in the yellow. I got a couple games on here. Both of them are at home, Miami and NC State. I think California will be a clear underdog in both of these games. Miami, I think I could really definitely see them winning that one. You know, that's definitely a game that they can absolutely compete in. Miami's coming off a downfall season from last year, so we do kind of expect Cal to probably compete in that game. And then NC State, just because it's a home game, that's the reason why it ended up being in the yellow. However, I think NC State does have a chance to be a really good team this year and obviously a top 25 team. But I think Cal is going to be a clear underdog in both of these games. Talent-wise, I think NC State and Miami both had talented rosters, and both of these games ended up being in the yellow because of that. But again, both of these games are at home. That's also the reason why both of these games ended up being in the yellow as well. So I think Cal will be a clear underdog in both of those games. And then you look at the rest of the games on here. These are all 50-50 games. Auburn on the road, Pittsburgh on the road, Oregon State in the non-conference, Wake Forest on the road, Syracuse, Stanford at home, and then, of course, SMU here on the road as well. These are all 50-50 games here for California, in my opinion. I think they can go either way. You look at Auburn in the non-conference, the home field advantage does favor the Tigers, and I know Auburn beat Cal last year, but I think that's a really even matchup based off of how the game went from last year. And then Pittsburgh on the road, just because it's on the road, that's the reason why it ended up being a 50-50 game. I know Oregon State is a non-conference game. You know, California could be favored in this one, but Oregon State did defeat Cal last year in the Pac-12, so I'm going to stick with that one and put it in the white. Wake Forest, I don't know how good this team is going to be. Same thing with Stanford. We don't know how good these two teams are going to be. Stanford, of course, is entering their first year in the ACC, so we don't know how good that team is going to be. And then you got Syracuse and SMU, which I think are pretty even matchups here for Cal. So again, 7 50-50 games on here for California on this schedule for 2024. I think all these games can definitely go either way. So let's now get a projected record here for Cal for 2024. This is not going to be my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count a couple of those green games as wins, and then you average out that one game in the orange at 20%, then average out those two yellow games here at 40%, and then you average out all these 50-50 games here in the white at 50%, and the overall projected record for Cal comes out to be 5-7 here for 2024. So that is what the projected record is for Cal heading into 2024 in their first year in the conference. I definitely could see Cal going 6-6 this year, definitely making it to a bowl game once again. If they do win, let's say 4 out of their 7 50-50 games here, I think that would be enough to make it into a bowl game. They do got some tough road games with Auburn and Pittsburgh. Wake Forest and SMU, I think, are definitely games that they can definitely win on the road. Florida State's going to be a really tough road game. They're definitely going to be double-digit underdogs in that one. Maybe they do compete for a little while in that game. I just don't think it's going to be quite enough to get a win. And then Miami and NC State, imagine if they win both of those games. They definitely can go 7-5 or 8-4. But 5-7 is the projection. I think worst case scenario for Cal would definitely have to be 4-8. And like I said, best case scenario would definitely have to be 6-6 and enough to make it to a bowl game there. But again, the projected record here for Cal is 5-7 here for 2024. Give me your thoughts on this California team down in the comments below. What do you think their projected record is for 2024? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.